The transport ship Valkyrie's Edge shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace above the war-torn planet of Zarian Prime. Captain Marcus Stone pressed his face against the viewport, watching the scarred surface roll beneath them. 3 years of brutal fighting had turned what was once a garden world into a wasteland of twisted metal and burning cities. "First time seeing a real battlefield, Captain?" asked Sergeant Riley, the grizzled veteran who'd been assigned as Stone's liaison. Her cybernetic arm whirred softly as she adjusted her weapon harness. Stone nodded grimly. As part of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, he'd seen plenty of conflict zones, but never anything like this. The Catharan Empire had been systematically destroying every human colony they could find, and Zarian Prime was their latest target. "What's our mission here, exactly?" Stone asked as they descended toward the main military base. Riley's expression darkened. "We're here to meet the Coalition's secret weapon. Problem is, nobody can control the damn thing." The base was a sprawling complex of prefabricated structures and defensive barriers. Soldiers from a dozen different species moved with the urgent efficiency of people who knew death could come at any moment. The humans were easy to spot among the towering Zephyrians and the crystalline Valdris warriors. They moved differently, with a fluid adaptability that had made them valuable allies despite being the newest members of the Galactic Coalition. As they walked toward the command center, Stone noticed something odd. Many of the non-human soldiers were giving the human contingent a wide berth, their alien expressions unreadable but somehow wary. "They're afraid of us," Stone observed. "Not us," Riley corrected. "Him." The command center buzzed with activity. Holographic displays showed troop movements, supply lines, and casualty reports that made Stone's stomach turn. At the center of it all stood General Tame, a massive Kitharan defector whose blue-scaled hide bore the scars of countless battles. "Ah, Captain Stone," the general rumbled in accented standard. "You arrive at a most interesting time. We have just received word that Warlord Kresh himself is leading the next assault. The Butcher of Three Worlds comes to finish what he started." Stone felt his blood run cold. Kresh was a legend of cruelty, even among the Kitharan military caste. His forces had never been defeated in open battle. "What about this secret weapon I've heard about?" Stone asked. The general's reptilian features twisted into what might have been a grimace. "Weapon? Yes, perhaps that is what he has become. But controlling him..." The general gestured helplessly with his massive claws. "3 of our best handlers are in the medical bay. He tolerates no one." Before Stone could ask for clarification, alarms began blaring throughout the base. The command center erupted into controlled chaos as officers rushed to their stations. "Kytheran Battle Group incoming," shouted a Valdris communications officer, her crystalline form pulsing with urgent light. "Long-range sensors detect..." "By the stars, it's a full invasion fleet." Through the reinforced windows of the command center, Stone could see the sky beginning to burn. Streaks of fire marked where enemy ships were beginning their atmospheric entry. The final battle for Zarian Prime was about to begin. "Sir," Riley said urgently, grabbing Stone's arm, "if we're going to see the dragon, it has to be now. Once the fighting starts, nobody goes near the containment area." General Thane overheard and turned toward them, his alien eyes reflecting both hope and desperation. "Perhaps?" "Yes, perhaps it is time. Captain Stone, you have clearance to enter Sector 7. But I warn you, approach with extreme caution." As they hurried through the base's corridors, Stone peppered Riley with questions. "This dragon, what exactly is it? Some kind of alien creature you've captured?" Riley's laugh was bitter. "Alien? No, Captain. He's as human as you or me. That's what makes him so terrifying." They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each one more heavily fortified than the last. The guards were exclusively human, Stone noticed, and they all wore the same expression of grim respect, mixed with barely concealed fear. The final checkpoint led to an underground facility that felt more like a prison than a military installation. The walls were made of some kind of energy-resistant alloy, and Stone could feel the hum of powerful force fields throughout the structure. "Before we go in," Riley said, stopping at a massive blast door marked with warning symbols in a dozen languages, "you need to understand something. The man you're about to meet was the most decorated soldier in human military history. 13 years of continuous combat, over 200 confirmed kills. Survivor of battles that killed entire regiments. But something broke inside him during the massacre at Kepler Station." Stone had heard of Kepler Station, an entire human colony, including thousands of civilians wiped out by Kitharan forces while the rescue fleet was still 3 days away. The sole survivor had been a single Marine who'd held the line alone for 72 hours. He saved over 3,000 people during the evacuation, Riley continued, but he watched 12,000 others die. When we found him, he was catatonic, completely unresponsive. The medics said he'd never fight again. What changed? The Kitherans attacked the medical ship he was on. Something inside him snapped. He killed 30 enemy soldiers with his bare hands, then stole one of their assault mechs and took out an entire enemy squadron single-handedly. Since then, he's been different. Unstoppable in combat, but afterward. Riley shook her head. He doesn't speak, doesn't respond to commands, doesn't seem to recognize anyone around him. The only time he shows any awareness is when there's a battle. The blast door cycled open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. At the far end, Stone could see another door, this one made of transparent aluminum. Through it, a figure sat motionless in what appeared to be a sparse living quarters. As they approached, Stone got his first look at the man they called the Battle Dragon. He was perhaps 30 years old with dark hair and pale skin, marked by an intricate network of scars. His most striking feature was his eyes. They were completely empty, staring at nothing with the vacant expression of someone whose mind had retreated to someplace far away. The man they'd come to see gave no indication that he was aware of their presence. He simply sat on the edge of his cot, hands folded in his lap, breathing with the mechanical rhythm of someone who existed rather than lived. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the underground facility as the Kitheran assault began in earnest. Stone watched the motionless figure through the transparent barrier, trying to reconcile what he saw with the stories he'd heard. "His name is David Chen," Riley said quietly. 29 years old, born on New Shanghai Colony. Lost his family when he was 16 during the first Kitheran raids. Enlisted the next day. As if responding to some internal signal, Chen's head suddenly lifted. His empty eyes focused on something beyond the walls, and for the first time since they'd arrived, he seemed truly aware. The change was immediate and unsettling. "How does he know?" Stone whispered. "We've never figured that out," Riley replied. "But he always knows when there's a fight coming." The lights in the facility suddenly dimmed as emergency power kicked in. Through the complex's communication system, they could hear General Thane's voice coordinating the defense. The Kitheran ground forces had begun their landing. Chen stood up with fluid grace, his movements no longer mechanical but predatory. He walked to a wall panel and pressed his palm against it. A hidden compartment opened, revealing a set of custom armor unlike anything Stone had ever seen. "We tried to keep weapons away from him," Riley explained. "But he just makes his own. The armor is his design too. Our best engineers can't figure out how half of it works." The armor was matte black with silver highlights that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. As Chen began putting it on, Stone could see that it was covered in symbols that weren't quite human in origin. Where did he learn to make something like that? That's another mystery. Some of the technology appears to be Kitheran, some Valdris, some we can't identify at all. It's like he's been studying alien warfare techniques and improving on them. Chen finished donning his armor and turned toward the transparent wall. For the first time, his eyes met Stone's. The captain felt a chill run down his spine. There was intelligence there, vast and cold, but it was intelligence focused entirely on one thing: destruction. The facility shook as explosions grew closer. Chen placed both hands against the barrier and pushed. The transparent aluminum, designed to withstand explosive charges, began to crack. "Shouldn't we stop him?" Stone asked. "Stop him?" Riley laughed grimly. "Captain, that barrier isn't to keep him in. It's to keep everyone else out when he's not active. He can leave anytime he wants." The barrier shattered like glass. Chen stepped through without acknowledging their presence and walked toward the exit. His movements were different now, purposeful and deadly. This wasn't the broken man they'd observed moments before. This was something else entirely. They followed at a distance as Chen made his way through the facility. The human guards pressed themselves against the walls as he passed, their faces showing the kind of respect usually reserved for natural disasters. Above ground, the battle had reached the base's outer perimeter. Kitheran shock troops, massive reptilian warriors in powered armor, were advancing through the defensive lines with methodical precision. Their plasma weapons cut through coalition forces like they were made of paper. Stone watched from the command center as Chen emerged from the underground facility. The moment he stepped onto the battlefield, something changed in the air itself. The Kitheran advance hesitated as if sensing a new threat. "Watch this," Riley said, pointing to the tactical display. He doesn't use weapons the way we do. He doesn't follow tactics the way we do. Hell, half the time I'm not sure he's fighting the same war we are. Chen moved across the battlefield like a force of nature. His armor seemed to absorb energy weapon fire without effect, while the weapons that emerged from hidden compartments were unlike anything in the Coalition arsenal. One moment he was firing projectiles that curved around cover to strike targets. The next he was wielding energy blades that cut through Catherine armor like tissue paper. But it wasn't just his equipment that made him devastating. It was the way he fought. Chen moved as if he could predict his enemy's actions before they made them. He was always in the right place at the right time. Always one step ahead of the alien warriors who had terrorized the galaxy for decades. How many times has he done this? Stone asked, mesmerized by the display. 17 major engagements, Riley replied. Never taken a serious injury. Never lost a battle. The Catherans have started calling him Ghost Walker in their own language. They think he's some kind of supernatural entity. On the display, Chen had reached the main Kithran landing zone. A full company of their elite guard, warriors who had never known defeat, turned their weapons on him. The plasma fire was so intense that the very air around him glowed white-hot. When the barrage ended, Chen was still standing. His armor showed no damage, no signs of stress. He began moving again, and this time the Kithran warriors broke ranks and ran. My God, Stone breathed. He's not just fighting them. He's terrifying them. The battle lasted another 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt once Chen entered the field. By the time the last Catharan transport lifted off in retreat, he had personally eliminated over 60 enemy soldiers and destroyed 3 armored vehicles. As the dust settled, Chen stood alone in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by the wreckage of the Catharan assault force. For a moment he remained perfectly still, as if listening to something only he could hear. Then, just as suddenly as the battle mode had taken him, it was gone. His shoulders slumped, his head dropped, and he began the slow walk back to the base. By the time he reached the facility entrance, he was once again the empty-eyed man who sat motionless in his cell. And that's the problem, Riley said as they watched Chen disappear back underground. He's the most effective weapon in the galaxy, but we can't communicate with him, can't direct him, can't even be sure he's fighting for us rather than just fighting because it's what he knows how to do. Stone stood in the command center, staring at the tactical display that showed the retreating Catharan forces. In all his years as a diplomat, he'd never encountered anything like David Chen. The man was simultaneously humanity's greatest asset and its most troubling mystery. Has anyone tried a different approach? Stone asked. Maybe someone who isn't a soldier? Riley shook her head. We've tried everything. Doctors, psychiatrists, even telepathic species. Nothing gets through to him. It's like he's locked himself away somewhere we can't reach. As if summoned by their conversation, General Tame approached them. The massive alien's expression was troubled. Captain Stone, the general rumbled, I have received new intelligence. Warlord Kresh is not retreating. This was merely a probing attack. The main invasion force is assembling in the outer system. When they come, they will bring enough firepower to glass this entire world. Stone felt his blood chill. How long do we have? Perhaps 72 hours. Maybe less. The general's alien features conveyed grim resignation. Even with our dragon, I do not see how we can stand against such numbers. The evacuation ships arrived at dawn, their hulls gleaming against the orange sky of Zerion Prime. Stone watched from the command center as civilian transports began loading the non-essential personnel. The base was being stripped down to a skeleton crew of volunteers who would make the final stand. Sir, called Lieutenant Hayes from the communication station, we're receiving a priority transmission from the civilian evacuation convoy. They're requesting permission to leave behind some of their people. General Thane's massive head turned toward the lieutenant. Requesting to leave people behind? That makes no sense. Hayes looked uncomfortable. Sir, it's a group of human civilians who refuse to evacuate. They're saying they want to help with the defense. Absolutely not, the general rumbled. This is a military operation. We cannot be responsible for civilian casualties. Stone stepped forward. General, with respect, these people have lived through 3 years of war. If they're choosing to stay, they might have reasons we should hear. Riley nodded in agreement. Captain's right, sir. Some of the best intelligence we've gotten has come from civilians who know this world better than we do. The general considered this for a moment, then gestured toward the communication station. Very well. Bring their representative here. But make it clear that anyone who stays does so entirely at their own risk. 20 minutes later, a small group entered the command center. Stone counted maybe a dozen people, all humans ranging in age from teenagers to elderly, but it was the youngest member of the group that caught his attention. She couldn't have been more than 16, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and clothes that had seen better days. What struck Stone most was her eyes. Unlike the fear or grim determination he saw in the adults, her expression was one of quiet curiosity. "I'm Dr. Elena Martinez," said an older woman who seemed to be the group's leader. "I ran the xenobiology research station here before the war started. These people are all that's left of the civilian research community. Doctor," General Thane said carefully, "while we appreciate your courage, I must emphasize that this base will be the target of a massive assault. We cannot guarantee your safety." Dr. Martinez nodded. "We understand, General, but we've been studying Kithran biology and technology for 3 years. We think we might be able to help." "How?" Riley asked. The doctor gestured to a young man carrying a data tablet. "We've been analyzing the wreckage from their previous attacks. We think we've found a weakness in their armor systems, a specific frequency that disrupts their energy shields." Stone noticed that the teenage girl had wandered away from the group and was studying the tactical displays with intense concentration. There was something about her focus that reminded him of someone, though he couldn't place who. "What's your daughter's name?" Stone asked Dr. Martinez. "Daughter?" The doctor looked confused, then followed Stone's gaze. "Oh, that's Maya. She's not my daughter. Actually, we're not entirely sure who her parents were. We found her hiding in the ruins of New Geneva Colony about a year ago. She hasn't spoken since." Stone felt a chill run down his spine. "She doesn't speak at all?" "Not a word. But she's brilliant. She has an intuitive understanding of technology that amazes even our best engineers. She's the one who figured out the frequency weakness in the Kithran shields." As if sensing their conversation, Maya turned toward them. Her eyes met Stone's briefly, and he saw the same vast intelligence he'd observed in David Chen, but without the emptiness. Where Chen's mind had retreated from the world, Maya's seemed to be reaching out, trying to understand everything around her. "Where exactly did you find her?" Stone asked. Dr. Martinez's expression grew somber. "New Geneva was where the Kithrans first tested their new interrogation techniques. They were trying to break the human resistance by targeting families with children. Maya was the only survivor. She was hiding in a collapsed building for nearly a week before our rescue teams found her." The details sent a cold shock through Stone's system. He'd read the classified reports on New Geneva. The Kithran forces had spent 3 days systematically torturing and executing civilians, trying to break the morale of the human military forces. The psychological trauma of witnessing such horrors would be enough to explain why a child might stop speaking. "Has she shown any interest in our special asset?" Stone asked carefully. "Special asset?" Dr. Martinez looked puzzled. Riley stepped in. "He means the dragon. The soldier in Sector 7. "Oh." The doctor's expression grew troubled. "We haven't been down there. From what we've heard, he's not exactly receptive to visitors." Stone made a decision that surprised even himself. "Maya," he called out. The girl turned toward him, her dark eyes alert and intelligent. "Would you like to see something interesting?" Maya tilted her head slightly, the first real expression he'd seen from her. After a moment, she nodded. "Captain," Riley said quietly, "are you sure about this? The dragon doesn't exactly have a good track record with visitors." "She's not a soldier," Stone replied. "She's not a doctor trying to fix him or a handler trying to control him. Maybe that's exactly what we need." The journey to Sector 7 took them through increasingly secure areas of the base. Maya walked beside Stone, taking in everything with the focused attention of someone cataloging details for future reference. She showed no fear of the heavily armed guards or the warning signs posted throughout the facility. When they reached the final checkpoint, Stone paused. "Maya," he said gently, "the man we're going to see has been through something terrible just like you have. He's not dangerous to people who aren't trying to hurt him, but he doesn't respond to anyone. Do you understand?" Maya looked up at him and nodded once, then pointed toward the sealed entrance to Chen's containment area. The blast door cycled open, and they walked down the corridor toward the transparent barrier. Chen sat in exactly the same position as before, staring at nothing with empty eyes. The replacement barrier hummed quietly with the energy field that held it together. Maya approached the barrier and stopped about a foot away from it. For a long moment, she simply studied Chen with the same intensity she'd shown the tactical displays. Then very slowly she raised her right hand and placed her palm against the transparent surface. Chen's reaction was immediate and startling. His head snapped up and his eyes focused directly on Maya. For the first time since Stone had met him, Chen's expression showed something other than emptiness. It showed recognition. Maya smiled, the first expression of emotion Stone had seen from her. Then she did something that made everyone in the corridor freeze. She spoke. "Hello, David," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I've been looking for you." Chen stood up slowly, his movements no longer mechanical. He walked toward the barrier and placed his own hand against it, directly opposite Maya's. When their palms touched the surface on either side, something extraordinary happened. The scars on Chen's face began to glow with a soft silver light. Maya's eyes widened, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she pressed her other hand against the barrier as well. "How is this possible?" Riley whispered. Stone shook his head, unable to speak. He was witnessing something that defied everything they thought they knew about David Chen. The man who had been unreachable for over a year was not only responding to Maya's presence, but seemed to be communicating with her in some way that transcended normal human interaction. Maya turned toward Stone, her eyes bright with an intelligence that seemed far older than her 16 years. "He's not broken," she said simply. "He's been waiting." The silver glow from Chen's scars pulsed gently as Maya kept her hands pressed against the barrier. Stone watched in fascination as the two seemed to be engaged in some form of silent communication that he couldn't begin to understand. "Maya," Stone said carefully, "can you tell us what's happening?" Without taking her eyes off Chen, Maya replied, "He's been fighting alone for so long that he forgot how to be with people. But he remembers me." "You've never met him before," Riley pointed out. Maya finally turned away from Chen, though she kept one hand against the barrier. "Not him specifically. But I remember the day the soldiers came to our colony. There was one who stayed behind when the others had to leave. He held the evacuation point for 3 days while we waited for rescue ships." Stone felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. New Geneva Colony. "You were there during the siege. David was the Marine who held the line," Maya continued. "He saved over 2,000 of us, including me. But when the rescue ships finally came, most of the civilians were already dead. David blamed himself for not being able to save everyone." Chen stepped closer to the barrier, his hand still pressed against Maya's. When he spoke, his voice was rough from disuse, but the words were clear. "I should have been faster, should have been stronger." It was the first time anyone had heard him speak in over a year. Riley's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon, a reflex born from months of dealing with Chen's unpredictable episodes. But there was no violence in his posture now, only an exhaustion that seemed to come from his very soul. "You saved me," Maya said simply. "You saved so many of us. That has to count for something." Chen's expression cracked, and for the first time since Stone had met him, the man looked human, vulnerable. "But I couldn't save them all. I couldn't save your parents. I couldn't save anyone's parents." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "You couldn't save everyone. Nobody could have. But you stayed when others would have run. You fought when others would have given up. That makes you a hero, not a failure." The silver glow from Chen's scars was beginning to fade, but his eyes remained focused and aware. Stone realized he was witnessing something remarkable, the healing of a mind that had been broken by impossible demands and survivor's guilt. "Maya," Stone said gently, "we need David's help. A much larger Kitharan force is coming, and we don't think we can stop them." Maya looked at Chen through the barrier. "Will you help them, David? Not because you have to, but because you choose to." Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was stronger. "I can't promise I won't lose myself again when the fighting starts. When the battle comes, I become something else, something that only knows how to destroy. Then I'll help you remember," Maya said. "I'll be your anchor." Riley stepped forward. "That's absolutely out of the question. We can't put a civilian, especially a child, anywhere near a combat zone." Maya turned toward her with an expression that was far older than her years. "Sergeant, I've been in combat zones for 3 years. I know how to survive, and David needs someone who understands what he's been through." Before anyone could object further, Alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The lights switched to emergency red, and General Thane's voice echoed through the communication system. All personnel to battle stations. Long-range sensors are detecting the main Kithaeron invasion fleet. Estimated time to orbital bombardment, 6 hours. Chen's entire demeanor changed instantly. The awareness and humanity that had been growing in his eyes was suddenly replaced by something cold and calculating. But this time, instead of the empty void Stone had seen before, there was purpose. "Let me out," Chen said, his voice taking on the mechanical tone they'd heard from him in combat footage. Maya pressed both hands against the barrier. "David, wait! Remember what I told you? You're not just a weapon. You're a person who chooses to fight for others." Chen paused, the transformation halting halfway. The struggle was visible on his face as he fought between his humanity and the battle state that had kept him alive through countless conflicts. "I don't know if I can control it," he admitted. "When the fighting starts, I lose myself. I become something that only knows how to kill." "Then don't try to control it," Maya said. "Let me help you guide it." Stone made a decision that would haunt him for years to come. Riley opened the barrier. "Sir, regulations clearly state..." "Sergeant, regulations also clearly state that we're supposed to avoid putting entire worlds at risk of annihilation. We're past the point of following normal procedures." Riley hesitated, then moved to the control panel. The barrier flickered and disappeared. For the first time in over a year, David Chen was free to move throughout the base without restriction. Maya stepped through the opening and approached Chen slowly. He stood perfectly still as she reached out and touched one of the scars on his face. The silver glow returned, brighter than before. "I can feel it," Maya said wonderingly. "The thing that lives in your mind during battle." "It's not evil, David. It's just trying to protect people the only way it knows how." Chen's expression shifted again, but this time the change was different. The cold calculation remained, but it was tempered by something else. Recognition, purpose, choice. "The Kithaerons are coming in force," Stone said. "Intelligence suggests they're bringing enough firepower to destroy this entire world. We need every advantage we can get." Chen nodded slowly. "I can stop them. But not alone. Not anymore." He looked at Maya. "I need someone to remind me why I'm fighting." Maya smiled, the expression transforming her young face. "I've been waiting my whole life to help you finish what you started." As they walked through the facility toward the surface, Stone couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing something unprecedented. Maya and Chen moved together with an almost supernatural synchronization, as if they were two halves of the same person. "Sir," Riley said quietly as they followed behind, "are we really going to let a 16-year-old girl into what's going to be the bloodiest battle of the war?" Stone watched Maya place her hand on Chen's arm, saw the way his inhuman focus softened just slightly at her touch. "Sergeant, I don't think we have a choice. Whatever's happening between them, it's the first time anyone has been able to reach him. If she can keep him anchored to his humanity while he fights, she might be the difference between victory and annihilation." The base around them was transforming into a fortress as soldiers prepared for the coming assault. But Stone found himself focusing on the unlikely pair walking ahead of them. A broken soldier who had become a weapon, and a silent girl who had found her voice in order to save him. The real battle, Stone realized, wasn't going to be against the Kithaeron invasion fleet. It was going to be the fight to preserve David Chen's humanity, while unleashing the monster he became in combat. The Kithaeron invasion fleet filled the sky like a plague of metal locusts. From the command center's observation deck, Stone watched as hundreds of ships took position in orbit around Zerion Prime. Each vessel was the size of a city block, bristling with weapons that could turn continents to glass. "Final count is 847 ships," reported Lieutenant Hayes, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Intelligence estimates they're carrying enough firepower to sterilize the entire planet." General Thane stood at the tactical display, his massive form radiating grim determination. "All evacuation ships have cleared the system. We are the only thing standing between Warlord Kresh and another human genocide." Stone looked around the command center. The skeleton crew that had chosen to stay numbered less than 300. Against the force assembling above them, it should have been a hopeless last stand. But then his eyes found Maya and Chen. They stood together near the main display, and the change in Chen was remarkable. He was still the same deadly warrior who had terrorized Catharan forces across the galaxy. But now there was something else. Purpose, direction, humanity. Maya had her hand resting lightly on Chen's arm, and every few moments the scars on his face would pulse with that strange silver light. Whatever connection they shared was keeping him grounded in ways that years of medical treatment had failed to achieve. "David," Maya said quietly. "Can you feel them up there?" Chen's eyes never left the display showing the enemy fleet. 800 ships. Approximately 40,000 soldiers. Warlord Kresh is in the center, aboard the flagship Bone Crusher. "How can you possibly know that?" Riley asked. Chen's expression grew distant. "I've fought Kresh before, at Kepler Station. He has a particular signature, a way of arranging his forces that's unmistakable." Stone felt a chill run down his spine. "You fought Warlord Kresh personally?" "During the final assault on the station. He came down to oversee the execution of the civilian population." Chen's voice took on the mechanical tone that indicated he was slipping toward his battle state. "I put a plasma round through his left shoulder before his guards drove me back." Maya squeezed his arm gently and the silver glow intensified. Chen's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained focused on the tactical display. "He'll remember you," Maya observed. "This isn't just about conquering the planet anymore. It's personal." General Tane approached them, his alien features grave. "Mr. Chen, our intelligence suggests the initial assault will begin within the hour. They'll start with orbital bombardment to soften our defenses, then deploy ground forces. We have perhaps 3,000 coalition soldiers to meet them." Chen studied the display for a long moment. "They're making a mistake," he said finally. "What kind of mistake?" Stone asked. "They're bringing too many ships. Kresh is so focused on overwhelming force that he's creating tactical vulnerabilities." Chen's finger traced patterns across the holographic display. "Their formation is designed for orbital bombardment, not for defending against a counterattack." Riley laughed bitterly. "Counterattack? David, we don't have any ships. Our entire fleet is 3 patrol boats and a medical transport." Chen turned toward Maya, and Stone saw something pass between them in that silent communication they shared. Maya nodded, her young face serious. "Show them," she said quietly. Chen walked to a different section of the command center and began working at a console Stone had never seen anyone use before. The display shifted, showing a 3-dimensional map of the base and surrounding terrain. "For the past year I've been building something," Chen said. "The medical staff thought I was having breakdown episodes. The guards thought I was just pacing, but I was mapping every tunnel, every abandoned facility, every piece of salvageable technology on this world." The display zoomed in, revealing an intricate network of underground passages that honeycombed the entire region. But more than that, Stone could see what looked like weapon emplacements, power relays, and defensive positions that hadn't been there during their initial survey. "My God," General Thane rumbled. "You've turned the entire continent into a fortress." "Not just a fortress," Chen corrected. "A trap. But it only works if we can get them to commit their ground forces before they realize what they're walking into." Stone studied the display with growing amazement. "This would have taken months to construct. How did you manage it without anyone noticing?" Maya smiled. "David doesn't sleep much, and when he's in his focused state, he can work for days without stopping. The maintenance crews thought the automated systems were just running routine repairs. The tactical display updated as new intelligence came in from their orbital sensors. The Kytheran fleet was beginning to move into bombardment formation. "They'll start firing in 30 minutes, Lieutenant Hayes reported. "Our shields can maybe handle 10 minutes of concentrated fire before they fail completely." Chen nodded as if he'd expected this. "That's exactly what we need." "Maya, are you ready?" The teenage girl took a deep breath, then placed both hands on Chen's shoulders. The silver glow from his scars spread outward, creating intricate patterns across his skin that looked almost like circuitry. "I'm ready," she said. "But David, you have to promise me something." "What?" "When this is over, when the fighting stops, you have to come back. Don't let the battle state take you permanently. Remember that you're fighting to save people, not just to destroy enemies." Chen's expression grew troubled. "Maya, I've been the dragon for so long, I'm not sure there's anything else left." "There is," she said firmly. "I can see it. The man who stayed behind to save civilians at New Geneva Colony. The soldier who chose to protect others instead of protecting himself. That person is still in there. Before Chen could respond, the first wave of orbital bombardment began. The base's shields flared to life as energy beams lanced down from the sky, turning the landscape around them into a hellscape of molten rock and twisted metal. Shields at 70%, Hayes called out. Chen's transformation began immediately. The humanity in his eyes was replaced by something cold and calculating. But this time Maya's presence seemed to be tempering the change. Instead of the complete loss of self that Stone had witnessed before, Chen retained a core of awareness. All personnel to defensive positions, Chen commanded, his voice carrying an authority that made even General Tane step back. Phase 1 of the operation begins now. Phase 1? Stone asked. Maya's eyes were glowing with the same silver light as Chen's scars. When she spoke, her voice carried an odd harmonic that made the hair on Stone's arm stand up. We make them think they're winning, she said. We let them believe that orbital bombardment is enough to break our defenses. When they deploy their ground forces, that's when the real battle begins. The shields failed just as Chen had predicted, and Kithaeron dropships began their descent through the smoke and flame. Stone watched the tactical display as thousands of enemy soldiers deployed around the base, confident that they were facing a broken and demoralized enemy. They had no idea they were walking into the most sophisticated trap in human military history, designed by a man who had spent a year studying their tactics and preparing for this exact moment. Chen stood at the center of the command center, Maya beside him, both of them connected by that strange silver glow. For the first time since the war began, Stone felt something he hadn't dared to hope for. They might actually win this. The ground beneath the base trembled as Kithaeron heavy assault mechs landed in the smoking crater, where the outer defenses had been. Through the command center's reinforced windows, Stone could see the massive war machines advancing with mechanical precision, their plasma cannons reducing what remained of the surface installations to slag. Enemy forces have established a perimeter, Lieutenant Hayes reported, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. They're deploying in standard siege formation. Estimated 45 minutes until they breach the main facility. Chen stood motionless at the tactical display, Maya's hands still resting on his shoulders. The silver patterns across his skin pulsed in rhythm with some internal countdown that only he could sense. Not yet, he said quietly. Let them get closer. General Tane watched the enemy advance with obvious discomfort. Mr. Chen, waiting much longer will give them time to bring up their heavy artillery. Once they deploy siege cannons, even your underground installations won't provide adequate protection. That's the point, Maya said, her voice carrying that strange harmonic resonance. They need to commit everything before they realize what they're facing. Stone studied the tactical display, trying to understand the strategy. From what he could see, the Kithaeron forces were following standard doctrine. Orbital bombardment followed by overwhelming ground assault. But Chen seemed to be anticipating something specific. There, Chen said suddenly, pointing to a section of the display. Warlord Kresh's command unit. He's moved to the front lines. Sure enough, Stone could see a massive command vehicle surrounded by elite guard units pushing toward the base. It was an unusual position for a high-ranking commander, far more exposed than tactical doctrine would recommend. He wants to oversee my capture personally, Chen continued. He remembers our last encounter. This has become about pride as much as military objectives. The building shook as Kithaeron forces reached the outer walls of the facility. Stone could hear weapons fire echoing through the corridors, as the skeleton crew of coalition soldiers engaged the enemy at carefully chosen choke points. Sir? Hayes called out. We're receiving surrender demands from the Kithaeron fleet. Warlord Kresh is offering to spare civilian populations on other worlds if we hand over the Ghostwalker immediately. Chen's laugh was cold and mechanical. He still thinks I'm the same broken soldier he faced at Kepler Station. He has no idea what I've become. Maya's grip on his shoulders tightened. Remember, David, you're not just a weapon. You're fighting to protect people. The silver glow intensified, and for a moment Chen's expression softened. I remember, he said quietly. Then louder. All units initiate Phase 2. What happened next defied everything Stone thought he knew about military tactics. Hidden weapon emplacements that had been disguised as rubble suddenly came online throughout the battlefield. Plasma cannons and missile batteries emerged from concealed positions, catching the Kithaeron forces in a devastating crossfire. But that was only the beginning. The ground beneath the enemy formations began to collapse as Chen's network of tunnels revealed their true purpose. Entire sections of the Kytheran army disappeared into carefully prepared sinkholes, while automated defense systems picked off survivors with surgical precision. How is this possible? General Tame demanded, staring at the tactical display in amazement. David's been preparing for this specific battle for over a year, Maya explained. Every piece of wreckage from previous attacks, every abandoned facility, every natural cave system, he's incorporated it all into a single, integrated defense network. Chen moved to another console, his fingers dancing across controls with inhuman speed. Phase 3, he announced. The real surprise came from underground. Massive blast doors opened in the bedrock beneath the Kytheran positions, revealing what could only be described as weapons of alien design. Energy projectors that Stone didn't recognize began firing upward, creating a dome of crackling power that trapped the enemy forces within the killing zone. My God, Riley breathed. Those are Kytheran weapons. How did you? Every piece of their technology I've encountered over the past 3 years, Chen said, his voice taking on that mechanical tone again. Studied, analyzed, improved upon. They taught me how to fight them by trying to kill me. The battle outside had turned into a rout. Kytheran forces that had been advancing with confidence were now trapped and being systematically destroyed by their own weapons turned against them. But Stone noticed that Warlord Kresh's command unit was still intact, protected by heavy shields and elite guards. He's adapting faster than I expected, Chen observed. Kresh was always the most intelligent of their war leaders. He's pulling back to a defensive position. Maya's eyes widened with concern. David, you're starting to slip. I can feel it. Stone looked at Chen more closely and saw what Maya meant. The man's expression was becoming increasingly cold and distant. The battle state was asserting itself more strongly as the fighting intensified. I have to go out there, Chen said. Kresh won't be stopped by automated defenses. This ends with him. No, Maya said firmly. We go out there together. Absolutely not, Riley interjected. Maya, you're a civilian. You can't. I'm his anchor. Maya cut her off. Without me, he'll lose himself completely. And if that happens, he might not stop fighting when the battle is over. Stone realized she was right. Chen's connection to his humanity was entirely dependent on Maya's presence. If he went into battle alone, he might emerge as nothing more than a killing machine. General, Stone said, making another decision he hoped he wouldn't regret. I want a full escort detail for Maya. Best soldiers we have. General Thane's alien features showed his reluctance, but he nodded. Very well, but they stay back unless the situation becomes desperate. Chen walked to a wall panel and retrieved his custom armor. As he began putting it on, Stone noticed new modifications, additional weapon systems, enhanced protection, and technological elements that seemed to defy known science. Where did you learn to build all this? Stone asked. Chen paused in his preparations. Every species we've fought against has taught me something new. The Kytherans showed me how to focus energy into concentrated bursts. The Valdris taught me about crystalline matrix technology. The Zephyrians demonstrated gravitational manipulation. You've been reverse engineering alien technology and improving on it, Stone realized. I've been preparing for this war in ways no one else could, Chen corrected, because no one else has survived as many encounters with our enemies. Maya stepped forward and helped Chen with the final pieces of his armor. The moment her hands touched the metal, it began to glow with that familiar silver light. Ready? She asked. Chen nodded, his face now completely hidden behind his helmet's visor. When he spoke, his voice was filtered through electronic modulation that made it sound inhuman. Time to end this war. As they prepared to leave the command center, Stone called out to them. Chen, Maya, remember why you're fighting. This isn't about revenge or destruction. It's about protecting the people who can't protect themselves. Maya turned back toward him, her young face serious but determined. We know, Captain. That's exactly why we're going to win. Stone watched through the tactical display as Chen and Maya emerged from the facility, surrounded by their escort detail. The moment Chen appeared on the battlefield, the remaining Kytheran forces seemed to hesitate. Even with their superior numbers and firepower, they had learned to fear the Ghostwalker. But this time Chen wasn't alone. And somehow Stone knew that would make all the difference. The battlefield was a hellscape of twisted metal and burning plasma, but Chen moved through it like a force of nature. Maya stayed close beside him, one hand always maintaining contact with his armor. keeping their connection alive even as the chaos of war raged around them. Stone watched from the command center as they approached Warlord Kresh's position. The Kitharan commander had taken refuge behind a barrier of wrecked vehicles, protected by his elite guard and heavy weapons emplacements. It should have been an impregnable position, but Chen had stopped being bound by conventional tactics long ago. "There," Maya said, pointing toward a collapsed section of the battlefield. "The underground passage you prepared last month. It leads directly behind their position." Chen nodded, his movements fluid and purposeful. The silver patterns on his armor pulsed brighter as they approached the hidden entrance. Stone could see through the tactical display that the escort team was having trouble keeping up with their advance. "Sir," Lieutenant Hayes called out, "we're losing visual contact. They're moving too fast for our tracking systems." Through the facility's external cameras, Stone caught glimpses of what was happening on the surface. Chen moved with a speed and precision that defied human limitations, his modified weapons cutting through Kitharan defenses like they were made of paper. But it was Maya's presence that made the real difference. Every time Chen's movements began to show the mechanical ruthlessness of his battle state, her touch would bring him back to awareness. "Incoming transmission from Warlord Kresh," Hayes announced. General Tame gestured for her to put it through. The massive alien warlord's voice filled the command center, speaking in heavily accented standard. "Human cowards hiding in your holes, send out the Ghost Walker to face me in honorable combat, or I will reduce this entire world to ash." Chen's voice came through their communication system in response, filtered through his armor's systems. "I'm already here, Kresh." The transmission cut off abruptly, followed by the sound of explosions from the Kitharan position. Stone watched the tactical display as energy readings spiked throughout the enemy formation. What followed was unlike any battle Stone had ever witnessed. Through fragmentary sensor readings and garbled communications, he caught pieces of what was happening. Chen had emerged from the underground passage directly behind Kresh's forces, but instead of launching a surprise attack, he had announced his presence. It was a challenge to single combat, issued in the ancient Kitharan tradition. "He's giving Kresh a chance to surrender," Riley observed with amazement. "Even now, after everything he's been through, he's still trying to minimize casualties." Maya's voice came through the communication system, clear and determined. "David, remember what we talked about. This isn't about proving you're stronger. It's about ending the war." Chen's response was barely audible above the sound of weapons fire. "I remember." The battle between Chen and Warlord Kresh lasted only minutes, but Stone knew he would remember every second for the rest of his life. The Kitharan commander was a veteran of hundreds of conflicts, enhanced with the best military technology his species could provide. He should have been more than a match for any single human soldier. But Chen had become something beyond human limitations. He moved with impossible speed, struck with devastating precision, and adapted to Kresh's tactics faster than the alien commander could adjust his strategy. The modifications to his armor allowed him to absorb energy weapons fire that should have been lethal, while his own weapons cut through Kitharan defenses with surgical precision. But it was Maya's presence that made the victory possible. Every time Chen began to lose himself in the bloodlust of combat, her voice would bring him back. She reminded him that he was fighting to protect others, not just to destroy his enemies. When Warlord Kresh finally fell, the effect on the remaining Kitharan forces was immediate and dramatic. The alien warriors who had terrorized the galaxy for decades suddenly found themselves leaderless and trapped in a kill zone designed by someone who understood their tactics better than they did themselves. The surrender came within an hour. Stone stood in the command center, watching as Kitharan soldiers laid down their weapons and submitted to coalition forces. It was the first time in the war that an entire Kitharan fleet had been captured intact, but his attention was focused on the two figures walking slowly back toward the base. Chen's armor showed damage from the battle, but he was moving under his own power. Maya walked beside him, her hand resting on his arm, guiding him back to humanity one step at a time. When they finally reached the command center, Chen removed his helmet with movements that were tired but natural. The empty mechanical expression that Stone had grown accustomed to was gone. In its place was the face of a man who had finally found peace with what he had become. "Is it over?" Maya asked, looking around at the displays showing the surrendering Kitharan forces. General Thane nodded slowly. "With Warlord Kresh dead and his fleet captured, the Kitharan military command structure will collapse. This was their last major offensive capability. Chen slumped into a chair, the exhaustion of the battle finally catching up with him. What happens now? Now, Stone said, we rebuild. The Coalition will need experienced soldiers to help establish peace with the remaining Kitharan territories, but that's a choice you'll have to make for yourself. Maya sat down beside Chen, her young face showing a maturity that came from witnessing too much war. You don't have to be the dragon anymore, David. You can choose who you want to be. Chen looked at her with an expression of profound gratitude. I don't know how to be anything else. That's okay, Maya said gently. We'll figure it out together. Stone watched the two of them and realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. A soldier who had been broken by the horrors of war had found healing through connection with someone who understood his pain. Maya had given Chen back his humanity, while he had given her a purpose beyond mere survival. In the weeks that followed, as the Coalition worked to establish peace with the surrendering Kitharan forces, Stone learned more about the bond between Maya and Chen. It wasn't just emotional support or shared trauma. There was something deeper, a connection that neither science nor psychology could fully explain. Maya remained by Chen's side as he transitioned from weapon to protector, helping him channel his extraordinary abilities toward rebuilding rather than destruction. The underground fortress he had constructed became the foundation for a new type of defensive system, one that protected without requiring the constant threat of violence. Chen never fully lost the edge that made him dangerous to enemies of peace. But with Maya's help, he learned to be human again. He became a teacher, sharing his knowledge of alien military technology with Coalition forces. He became a negotiator, using his reputation to establish ceasefires with remaining Kitharan holdouts. Most importantly, he became a guardian, using his abilities to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The war ended not with the destruction of the Kitharan Empire, but with its transformation. The captured fleet provided intelligence that led to the overthrow of the military caste that had driven the species to constant warfare. In their place rose leaders who remembered what their civilization had been before it became consumed with conquest. Stone often thought about the day he first met David Chen, sitting motionless in his cell with empty eyes and mechanical movements. That man had been lost, consumed by guilt and trauma, until he became nothing more than a weapon. But Maya had seen through the damage to the person underneath. She had reached out to someone everyone else had written off as unreachable, and in doing so had not only saved him but had helped end a war that had claimed millions of lives. In the end, the most powerful weapon in the galaxy hadn't been Chen's modified armor or alien technology. It had been the simple human act of one person refusing to give up on another, no matter how broken they seemed to be. The dragon had been tamed not by force or manipulation, but by compassion, understanding, and the patient touch of someone who saw his scars not as evidence of damage, but as proof of how much he had sacrificed to protect others. And in learning to be human again, David Chen had become something far more powerful than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. He had become hope itself, proof that even the most damaged among them could find their way back to who they were meant to be.